Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. I'm actually really excited to talk about this movie, and I'm really glad I ended up giving it a second chance, actually. Let me explain that. So, this movie, both times I tried to watch it, well, one of them, the second time, I did get through the whole thing, and now I'm making this video. I was watching this on Amazon Prime. I just kind of stumbled on it. There's so many weird movies in there. Honestly, this feels more like a movie that I'd find on Tubi. I feel like it definitely has that vibe. Not saying like every movie on Tubi is bad, but it seems like some kind of like weird, not very well known movie that I would absolutely find on there. Actually, I think when I was Googling to find this image, which is just like the only poster I can find for this movie, by the way, I think this movie is on Tubi, so I probably would have stumbled on this eventually. But before I continue, I just want to say the poster is really goofy to me. I didn't even notice when I was looking through it on Prime of like, oh, there's just like a person that isn't wearing clothes in the front of it. I saw the poster and I saw the guy on there and I in the background and I thought, okay, what is this? And the poster makes it look like, well, I mean, other than the title, I don't think you'd know it's about like vampires or whatever. I mean, that is a coffin on the front too. You'd think like, okay, it's some kind of like weird sexual vampire movie. Okay, no, it's a goofy as fuck comedy, and it's so bad, but I enjoyed it so much. Okay, let me continue. Let me continue on the context of why I had to loop around with this movie. Okay, so yeah, I stumbled on it on Amazon Prime, and I started watching it. I did read the description stuff. It's about a vampire that ends up trying to become human again, which I think is a cool concept, honestly. And I started watching it and I realized immediately, like, oh, this is actually really bad. like I sort of liked the vampire character the first time I was watching this movie, but I only got like 10 minutes in or so and I was like, oh, this looks so bad. I don't really want to continue with this. So I stopped it and I kind of just forgot about it a little bit, and that was, I think, like maybe last year or something. It's definitely been a bit. So anyway, I flash forward to when I'm recording this, I guess like a couple months later or something, and I was visiting my aunt and uncle and we were hanging out and stuff, and my uncle and I watched Bohemian Rhapsody, which led us to watching, I'm going on like a slight tangent here. I promise it connects to all this. We watched the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and I'd never seen any footage of the Live Aid concert. You know, it's at like part of it's at the end of the movie. So we started off with the Queen performance in that, which is easily like my favorite part of the whole concert. Oh my gosh, I got like goosebumps from that. Anyway, I'm looking through Wikipedia. We're going through all the concerts and stuff and going through all the people, and I thought, Adam Ant, why does that name sound familiar? And we get to see him perform, and I was thinking to myself, he popped up on screen, I was like, oh shit, this is the guy from the vampire movie I gave up on. Which feels so goofy because like I didn't know who he was or anything. I thought he actually was just an actor. So I feel like it's probably the reverse for most people who are thinking like, oh, the 80s rock stars now in this really cheesy movie playing a vampire. But for me, it's the opposite, where I first encountered him in this movie of being this kind of dorky 300-year-old vampire, and then I see him at the Live Aid concert with the footage and stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's like a lot cooler than that. I do want to kind of check out his music, though. I don't really remember the song he played with that concert, but I don't know, it seemed like he had a fun vibe. Anyway, but yeah, from watching the concert and seeing him there, I remembered about the movie. It was the only other thing I knew him for. And then I went to watch the movie, and then it took me a while to come home, but I just kept thinking about the movie, and I really, really wanted to watch it. I was just more curious about it now, and I got through the whole thing this time. And let me just say, before I get into my notes, it kind of feels like a made-for-TV movie. It just has that vibe to it of just seeming really low quality and everything. Let's see. The acting is really bad. The script, the writing for this is also really bad. Dialogue comes off as like kind of cringy. The performances aren't good. it has like a very 80s soundtrack. This movie is from like really early into the 90s. I don't remember if it's like 1991 or 1993. Yeah, this movie, it's... Hold on, I'm getting a Discord message. Oh, okay. I thought it was my friends trying to ping me, but it's someone else. Anyway, yeah, this movie has a really 80s soundtrack. It feels... I mean, it makes sense when you have a movie that's like from super early into a decade, but still... It feels like it's from the previous decades. This is a movie from the early 90s, but it feels very, very, very 80s in like every way possible, pretty much. Where it has a very 80s soundtrack. Not the vampire character, but the other lead, her name's Kendall, feels like a stereotypical movie, like 80s businesswoman or something. But yeah, the movie feels the music feels very 80s, but there's like two specific songs that are instrumentals that just play throughout the whole movie. It's like the movie doesn't really use anything else, honestly. It's kind of funny. And one of them is like the kind of romantic / kind of sad theme. It's sort of used for situations with both. It's like the emotional theme of the movie. And then the other one is this song that feels like it would be a ringtone or something, or reminded me of something that would be in like a GameCube game. And I only expected it to play once. It plays during this whole montage of like the vampire character trying to become human. It sounded really good. I actually do kind of want to find the soundtrack for this movie. I doubt I'm gonna find it because I can only find this one poster for the movie. I'm actually surprised it's even on streaming at all. Not surprised it's on Tubi, but I was surprised it was on Amazon Prime. And I've been reading you can't find this movie like on DVD anywhere, which makes me want to see if I can track it down or something. Not that I loved it that much, but I think it would be kind of fun to have this really campy movie on DVD. But yeah, the acting's bad. The dialogue is really bad. It's just a very bad, but in like a funny way, sort of movie. And despite all that, I really, really enjoyed it. I didn't expect to like it this much. I thought I was going to give up on it, honestly. I think the beginning... now that I've seen the whole thing, I think the beginning was kind of the most fun, but it also was the part that felt the slowest, which is why I wanted to stop watching it. There's a lot of actually kind of funny lines in this movie. Some of the jokes the characters make. I like the performances are bad, but I did enjoy them anyway. I thought the only two like really main characters were going to be the vampire guy, his name is Zachary, and his human roommate Kendall. I thought it was just going to be those two, and I thought this was kind of be more like Splash a little bit, honestly. I am kind of a sucker for like non-human fish out of water character trying to navigate the human world, or romance rom-com kind of movies anyway. And it kind of starts like that and then sort of transitions into something else. But then there's two other main characters, which are Kendall's ex, Dwight, who I thought was going to be more of like a threat, but it was only for like at the beginning of the movie. And then Zachary also has an ex named Marissa who gets introduced like halfway through the movie, and they all sort of just kind of end up together at the end. Anyway, I'm gonna go through my notes. Some of them, you know, there's parts of this movie I had to I audibly gasped at things happening in the plot. It was kind of funny to think about. Sorry, this movie's like so stupid that I'm just kind of giggling thinking about it, but I like genuinely enjoyed it. Like, even the way it starts out is kind of crazy. So it's Kendall and her soon-to-be ex Dwight, or I don't think they're even really dating at first. He apparently has asked her to marry him 9 times, he's been rejected those 9 times, and he still keeps pestering to marry her, and they're both divorced. He's been divorced twice. I feel like that's a little bit more of a red flag, and especially because he has this line he says to her at the beginning to Kendall of like, how many years will you waste alone, unfulfilled, childless, without anyone's arms around you? And you know what, if someone said that to me in my own house, I would just tell them to like get the fuck out of the house. Honestly, like, we're never going to speak again if you're going to talk to me like that. Kendall's so weird as a protagonist, where it's like there's all these weird things happening to her, unpleasant people, and she just kind of almost brushes everything off, well, except for some stuff at the beginning, like when she gets used to Zachary being a vampire and they've sort of like met more, like actually start hanging out and stuff, she's really chill with it and everything for the most part. She kind of stops giving a shit about Dwight or some of the other people. She's like very, very carefree, and I feel like with a lot of the situations she ends up in, I'm thinking like that's not how most people would react. But it's kind of funny though. But she accidentally agrees to marry Dwight, and I thought that was going to be more of a plot point, honestly, of like, oh, she accidentally agreed and he's going to probably try to marry her the whole movie, and then she's going to end up with Zachary or something. But no, her accidentally becoming engaged to Dwight literally doesn't matter after the first like 20 minutes of the movie. That just gets completely dropped. It's kind of weird actually, where Dwight is kind of mad at Kendall for wanting to be with Zachary, and he's trying to find out who Zachary is throughout most of the movie, and does eventually find out he's a vampire and stuff. But Dwight never feels like a romantic rival. And you know how in some of these kind of like rom-coms or whatever, there's like the protagonist's like crazy ex or something that is trying to get back with it, or who's like a big jerk who's like trying to get back with them the whole movie or something. No, Dwight is only like that for like a little bit of the movie. Like Kendall and Zachary end up as like roommates and stuff, and then eventually forming like a romantic relationship and stuff where they're dating. And Dwight kind of doesn't really seem to care that much. It's kind of weird. He's at first like kind of mad at it. I don't even know if he thinks that Kendall and Zachary are dating or whatever. And then he ends up meeting the other vampire character, Marissa, and ends up immediately like wanting her, and then from there kind of just doesn't really care about Kendall anymore. For being a woman that he tried to get married to like 9 times and then just suddenly stops giving a shit about her the moment he meets a hot vampire is just really funny to me. I do think a lot of the vampire stuff at the beginning is kind of cool. Like the reason Zachary and Kendall end up meeting at all is because Kendall's house was originally his house, but he ends up in a coffin behind her fireplace and going to sleep for like 200 years for reasons that get explained later in the plot. And then he ends up waking up. I think it's just kind of on accident. I think there's like a lightning storm and something dislodges the coffin and it causes him to wake up. Otherwise, he probably would have just slept forever in there, honestly. There's like a secret passageway through the fireplace, which leads to this sort of crypt or whatever that's covered in all these spider webs. I like how it looks kind of spooky, and then Zachary ends up inside of Kendall's house, and it's just the most pink like 90s place you've ever seen. So then it ends up being this sort of series of misunderstandings which is where the beginning kind of is sort of not even the most, actually probably the most serious it takes itself, which feels kind of weird, because the movie gets like progressively goofier as it goes along in like a good and bad way. Sorry, there's like a fly that's flying around here, so if I suddenly like pause, it's because I'm trying to swat it away. I cannot get this thing to leave. Yeah, so it starts out as these like very slow with a series of kind of misunderstandings, I guess, where Zachary, oh yeah, because he's a vampire, so he has to drink blood from people. He only does it to women for some reason. It's treated as sort of like a sexual thing, not on his end though. Well, maybe that's why he's only choosing women. For the women, they're like sort of moaning a little bit, and I don't think they even realize he's like trying to suck their blood or anything. I think they just think, oh, he's oh sweet, damn it, sorry, the fly. I thought I killed it. I was like, yeah, but no. I think they think he's just trying to like romantically kiss their necks or something. But it's like kind of awkward at really weird at the beginning, where I completely understand why she's pissed at him, because Zachary, I think, hears Kendall upstairs because the fireplace is downstairs, and he goes up to her room. And I thought, because she's laying there in the bed, I thought he was going to just try to like wake her up or something, or push her off the bed. But no, instead he gets on top of her and he tries to like suck her blood. And she thinks it's her ex at first and is like really into it, and then he tries to call her from his car, and it takes her a little too long to realize, oh shit, this isn't the guy that tried to marry me or whatever, and she freaks out, and she accuses him of being a sex offender, and he's trying to explain to her that she's a vampire, which I know sounds really weird. It's like kind of funny of like him trying to actually explain that he's a vampire or whatever, but then it's also kind of a little weird of, she thinks like, oh, you're some kind of like creepy perv or whatever, and he's trying to just explain that he was just trying to bite her for the blood and stuff. I still don't get why he needed to like lay on top of her for that, though. That was kind of weird, because any other time he tries to bite someone, well, it's usually that they're just out and about and they're standing, and then he goes up to them and it kind of looks like he's trying to kiss them or something. I don't know why he couldn't have just like laid next to Kendall or something in the bed and tried to bite her. I don't think he needed to be like directly on top of her, but whatever. It's kind of, I always find it interesting. I don't really watch like a ton of vampire stuff, but I find it interesting. It feels like every time I watch something with vampires, there's always like different rules or abilities, or like how many abilities they have or whatever. And with this one, this vampire Zachary is like pretty, actually kind of normal, honestly. He just feels like he's just some guy, basically. He doesn't have any kind of like ego or whatever about like being a vampire. He actually doesn't even want to be a vampire anyway. He doesn't have vampire powers, or I'm not really completely sure. He can't turn into a bat, which leads to a scene later on where you think like, oh, okay, he maybe can turn into a bat, but he doesn't. He just does something kind of dorky instead. He doesn't have super strength. Like Kendall like actually tries to fight him, and she does actually kind of kick his ass. He doesn't even try to fight back or anything, but there's no super strength or anything. He can't fly, he can't turn into a bat. He does have a reflection in the mirror, and I like how Kendall keeps trying to ask him about all this stuff, and he's like, yeah, I'm a vampire, I'm not like a ghost or anything or whatever. The one power I think he might have, and it's like a maybe, I don't know, because the other vampire Narissa tries to do it as well too, of like maybe hypnosis, because they both tell people of like, oh, just look into my eyes, but it doesn't seem like the people are hypnotized or the vampire eyes change or anything. That the other person just kind of looks at them, and it seems more like a distraction, if anything, to like go to bite them in the neck. Maybe it's to relax them a little. I'm not completely sure on the hypnosis thing, but other than possibly that, these vampires have no actual abilities. I mean, they do have fangs, they do bite people and suck their blood, they don't age, and they're also like hundreds of years old or whatever, but that's kind of about it, which I think works kind of well for the movie, because it's about a vampire that wants to become human, and apparently turning into a human is actually really easy in this movie, or the fact that they can revert back to being a human at all is interesting. They do even explain about like, oh, vampires can't be born, they have to be like bitten or whatever. You can like keep biting people, but you have to like continuously bite them to like get them turned into a vampire. It's like it takes time sort of a thing. But yeah, Kendall and Zachary end up like arguing for a while at the beginning, and this series of misunderstandings of trying to explain that he's a vampire. And that's, I feel like, where most of the sort of funny jokes come from. And then there's these two police officers. They only have like 2 scenes in the entire movie where they're in this police station, and it's Kendall and then later Dwight that are trying to call the police and say like, hey, I think there's a vampire here. And it's just the police basically doing like stand-up kind of jokes, and it's with these annoying voices, and the jokes are actually really badly aged. It just doesn't come off as funny. I mean, there's a lot of things in this movie that aren't funny, but I felt like the stuff with the police officers was the most not funny, unfunny, whatever. And then Dwight ends up showing up. Dwight, I thought, was just gonna be this like lame, kind of mean, like romantic rival. Dwight is one of the funniest characters in this entire movie, where he starts off like, you know, he wants to marry Kendall, and you think, ooh, it's gonna be this whole thing, and then he ends up meeting Zachary, and you think, okay, he's gonna be the romantic rival, but then he spends the rest of the movie first trying to find out if Zachary's a vampire or something, or he does a little bit. It's kind of funny because he realizes that Zachary's dead and thinks that he might maybe be a vampire or something, and then Zachary ends up changing clothes into more of like a kind of 90s outfit. I'll explain that more later. And then Dwight not only doesn't recognize that Zachary's the person that was trying to be with Kendall at the beginning, but also has no idea who he is and hires him to work for his insurance company. It's the whole thing. But yeah, Dwight has a lot of funny lines. I like how whoever plays Dwight just tries to ham it up as much as possible. It's so Dwight's such a loser, but in like a really funny way. Like when you get to see him again once Zachary's introduced into the story, he's like trying to flirt with Kendall, and Zachary's like unconscious in the bed or something, and Dwight thinks it's Kendall and tries to kiss her, but it's Zachary, and he ends up like freaking out or whatever. And it's kind of funny. I'm curious about Dwight and his like sexuality or whatever, because later on he ends up with Marissa, not like romantically as a couple, but she's trying to suck his blood later in the movie, and the entire time it's going on, Dwight can't shut up about like comparing it to when he was like touching Zachary at the beginning of the movie, thinking it's Kendall, and I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. But then it leads to this whole thing where like Kendall's trying to tell trying to tell Dwight how Zachary's a vampire, and Dwight thinks she's inviting him to a threesome, and that Zachary is some kind of perv that's into like really into necks or whatever, and oral sex, I guess, too. This movie's like I know there's a nude woman on the poster and stuff. There isn't really actually, there's like one sex scene in this movie. You don't see anything, and it's really short. This isn't really like it's like a horny movie. There's like horny jokes and stuff, but there isn't really sex. It's kind of weird. And then you get Zachary's whole backstory and everything, where he's talking about Marissa, which is part of the reason I was thinking like, oh, maybe she's not going to be a character or important or anything. I thought, oh, okay, this is just the person that turned him into a vampire. Whereas basically she turns him into a they end up becoming lovers. He gets turned into a vampire by her, and then she ends up just ghosting him out of nowhere, and he gets sad and he goes into his coffin for 200 years, and then, you know, he ends up meeting Kendall and stuff. And then the movie sort of gets fun for a while, where probably like my favorite part of it, where Kendall is trying to introduce Zachary to like the world of the 90s and stuff. Like she takes him to a party, and I was really confused why he kept having to tell people he worked for an ice cream company. And then I remembered, oh, right, he's dead. He's cold. So people shake his hand and stuff, and they're like, why are you so cold or whatever? And then he ends up at a party where he's like dancing alone and stuff because he doesn't know how to dance with everyone else. And then he ends up trying to like waltz with Kendall. And it's really awkward because there's like peppy 80s music in the background. I like that every once in a while in this movie it switches to like a first person POV in the way the camera moves and stuff, but then it just stops doing that after a while. It's kind of, there's a lot of weird choices in this movie. And then, you know, Kendall actually isn't that freaked out about Zachary being a vampire. I was kind of surprised about that, except for when he's drinking people's blood, which doesn't look like a vampire trying to suck someone off anyway. It just looks like someone trying to kiss somebody else on the neck. But Kendall keeps freaking out about it and trying to like cover it, like distract people walking by or whatever, even though it's not a big deal and no one cares. What else? I know what am I saying? Car alarms. There's a talking car in this movie. Not like a sentient talking car, but like there's a car alarm that talks, and I didn't know that was a thing in the 90s, or maybe it's just a thing in this movie. It happens in one scene, and I was like, wait, the car alarms used to talk or whatever? And sometimes I kind of forgot that Zachary was a vampire, honestly. Not just because he eventually ends up dressing in, like, normal clothes. But I do think it's kind of interesting. I guess the fangs are, like, retractable or whatever within this universe. Because, like, you can see that the vampire characters have fangs when they're going to, like, bite someone or whatever. But then there's times at the beginning of the movie where Zachary will, like, smile or move his mouth or something. And the teeth are just normal. I guess that's probably better for helping people blend in. The romance in this movie feels kind of also awkward. It feels very rushed. There's this one part where I was just like, this could have been a cute moment, but just ruined by the editing. There's this one part, it's when Zachary is trying to tell Kendall, like, okay, I can become human, but it's not like he's doing this for her or anything. Like, all the descriptions for this movie say something of like, oh, this vampire falls in love with a human woman and decides to become human or to get rehumanized or whatever. He's not really doing it for Kendall. It's that he already wanted to become human anyway, and he didn't want to be a vampire. And it's more so that he needs her help to become human, and he ends up falling in love with her along the way. It's kind of like The Little Mermaid, like the Disney one, where it's like Ariel wants to become human, and then she ends up meeting Eric, and they fall in love, and Eric's kind of a bonus with her becoming human, but it's originally that Ariel just wanted to become human anyway for her own sake. It's kind of like that with this movie. Anyway, there's this part where Zachary and Kendall are talking, and he's saying like, hey, can you help me become human? Which it turns out to become human, he just has to basically restart his insides, like his digestive system. And it takes a year, and he becomes human, and that's it. So she agrees to do that, and he gets really excited, and he goes to pick her up and spins her around, and I don't remember what the line is that he said. I think it's like, you're wonderful or whatever, but it looks so, which sounds like, oh, that's kind of like a cute little like thing or whatever, but then it's so awkward in this movie, where the line delivery and the spin are awkward, where the actor's mouth isn't moving when he says the line, and he picks her up to spin her, but it's not like a joyful, like a quick spin or anything. It's like it cuts, there's like a very obvious cut between like when he's talking to Kendall and then when he suddenly he's like holding her up or something. It was actually the one scene in the movie where I'm like, okay, what was going on with the editing here? But it was a bummer because that sounds like such an easy thing to like pick someone up and like happily spin them around or whatever, but the fact that they needed to like edit it weird is weird to me. And then you find out there's a vampire hunter. It's a dude named Helsing, like Van Helsing, except his name's not Van Helsing. Van Helsing, yeah, and you think, okay, this vampire hunter is probably going to be a threat or whatever, where he's like trying to get information about Zachary or something, but then he ends up getting taken out of the story by Marissa at some point and gets his like blood sucked or whatever. So it's weird. This movie keeps introducing people and things you think, okay, these are going to be obstacles for the main characters, and then it's like, no, there kind of are no obstacles basically. And then you get this whole like kind of not really a montage, I guess a little bit, because there's like dialogue and things happening in there of the year of like Zachary becoming human and stuff. Like Kendall has to like basically try to feed him human things, and I get that she needs to restart his digestive system. Why did she choose to start with milk? Why not start with like a glass of water or something? And then she ends up also cleaning his crypt because he still needs to go in there to sleep in the coffin while he's like being de-vampirized for a year or whatever. It was kind of funny. Kendall ends up cleaning it at one point when Zachary's sleeping, and he wakes up and he says, the cobwebs are gone, spiders will have a fit. There's a lot of just kind of funny little lines like that kind of got a chuckle out of me. Or like Zachary having an answering machine message that just says in like a very like serious voice, like, hello, I can't come to the phone right now, I'm dead. Like that's the whole thing. And then Nerissa ends up getting introduced into the story. Why are all the vampires really hot in this movie? That was just kind of funny to me. I don't know. And then from there, Dwight being a threat to like Zachary and Kendall's, but I don't know why I keep forgetting Kendall's name. Dwight being a threat to Zachary and Kendall's relationship just becomes non-existent as soon as Nerissa is introduced, where they end up kind of being paired together. They don't become a couple. It's more like he just kind of keeps hanging around her, where she's like a very no-nonsense person and Dwight is an idiot and kind of a loser, honestly. But it makes kind of a funny dynamic between the two of them. I'm glad the movie, I guess, finds something to do with Dwight at that point. Otherwise, I feel like he would have gotten phased out of the story by now. I like this thing Zachary does. It's mostly early on in the movie, as he's like adjusting to the world of the 90s, where someone will ask Zachary a question, he doesn't know the answer, and then he turns to Kendall and he's like, they'll ask him like, oh, do you like ice cream? And he'll turn to Kendall and be like, do I? And she's like, no. And then he'll look back at the person and say no. It's only for like a little bit of the movie, but I found that kind of funny. Something that bothered me with this movie, I get why, because they're trying to like get this character into, he has to adapt to the 90s and becoming human and whatever. Why did they dress him like a 90s fuckboy? What happened to his drip? I love how, like, his cape, his cloak or whatever, it's kind of just around him a lot at the beginning of the movie. I don't remember what is underneath the cloak, but it looks cool, it's a cool fit, and they get rid of his cloak and they replace it with a jacket. He ends up in a tracksuit, and then he ends up in business suits. The business suits actually look fine, but, like, there's, like, a chunk of the movie where he's wearing a backwards hat. It looks very, like, stereotypically 90s. There's a reason I said 90s fuckboy. And I'm just like, no. Why did they do this to him? It bothers me, especially because he has nice... Adam Ant has nice hair in this movie, and they cover it with this stupid backwards cap, and it just bothers me. Which is kind of funny, because eventually in the movie, Zachary, is dressed, like, in a suit and... whatever, and the characters are like, I miss you being a vampire. I feel like part of that probably is the outfit and stuff, which he does not end up getting back with the cloak and everything. There's more to that later. But I do like that Zachary and Kendall are roommates before even anything actually romantic happens. They're just kind of end up sort of becoming friends and hanging out and stuff. Well, it's originally that they're hanging out and trying to get Zachary to being used to human stuff, but then he ends up becoming in charge of an insurance company and becomes an insurance salesman, and then they sort of just start having their own lives and aren't really like hanging out as much anymore. But they do end up kissing like an hour into the movie. Like, they do end up becoming romantic, and they're just kind of like dating the rest of the movie, which is kind of nice. I like this thing that Zachary does where he kind of tilts up Kendall's head a little bit when he's going to kiss her. I thought that was kind of cute. But I just felt bad for him as a character throughout this entire movie, especially with the ending. I felt so sorry for him. But when he ends up seeing Marissa again, it kind of sucks, where it's like you get the full picture of like, oh yeah, she's like his ex, and when they get to interact for the first time in like 200 years, where it's like he fell in love with her, she ends up turning into a vampire. They spend like a good 100 years together. She leaves him. He gets sad about it for like 200 years, and then he ends up waking up and meeting Kendall, and they're like dating now or something, and then Nerissa or whatever just shows up and is like, hey, I want to date you again. It's like, dude, what the heck? I wanted to know more about vampires in this movie, though. Like, Nerissa does end up saying about like how the ones that try to rehumanize themselves, it usually doesn't end well for them, which Zachary never really has that problem. Like, there's one point where drinking blood actually kind of hurts him a little bit, but it just means his digestive system's working and he ends up fine. He's never in like really any serious danger of trying to become human again. And there's also, I guess, synthetic blood, but it causes the vampires to act weird. But none of this stuff ever happens to the characters. It's just kind of like casually mentioned. And then Zachary and Kendall, they end up having sex. And I was thinking, like, man, based on the comments in this movie that the characters make about the vampires, I would not want to, like, you know, fuck a vampire or whatever. Like, all the characters describe Zachary as physically cold to the point where he has to lie, saying he works at an ice cream company. When Dwight ends up accidentally kissing him at the beginning, he says it's like kissing a dead fish. Multiple characters comment on Zachary's smell. So it's like, yeah, he's hot, but if you're gonna start like having sex with someone that's really, really cold and also smells horrid, that doesn't sound like a pleasant experience. I mean, for me it would be fine in that I don't really have a sense of smell anyway, but touching someone that is so cold, like they're basically dead because they're dead, just sounds icky. And then it ends up being weird where at the end of the movie, you know what, yeah, I am gonna spoil that actually, why not? Kendall ends up pregnant, and I was wondering what the heck is the time frame of that. They don't clarify if the baby would be a vampire, because at the point where when her and Zachary like have sex in the movie, it's like I don't know how long they've been living together, but I'm assuming it's been like several months or something where he's like trying to become human. But the thing is, he isn't fully human at that point. So what does that end up to? And they only find out she's pregnant at like the end of the movie, but the whole story takes place within like, it's specifically a year that Zachary ends up turning human, trying to turn human. So if she's pregnant by the end of the movie, it's just like this whole complicated thing. Though I think before they try, she asks him about like sex or whatever, or no, there's something about babies, because it turns out he, like when he was with Marissa, Zachary was constantly mentioning about wanting to have a baby or something, and Kendall makes a joke about that, and Zachary says something about like sperm or whatever. So I paused the movie and I was thinking, like, can vampires like fuck before this ends up getting confirmed? So I don't know. Anyway, and then there's this bit where he tries to turn into a bat, where he tells her like, to Kendall, like, oh yeah, they're watching this movie's inconsistent with its lore, where Zachary doesn't know who Dracula is, but then they're watching the Dracula movie from the 30s, and Zachary comments like, oh, I really like this actor, and I'm thinking, like, you don't know who Dracula is, but you like the actor that's known for playing Dracula. Anyway, yeah, Zachary says when they're watching the movie of like, oh yeah, I actually can turn into a bat and I'm embarrassed, and you think like, okay, he's gonna turn into a bat or something cool. And I was thinking, because of like how this movie feels like a made-for-TV movie, kind of lower budget or whatever, I thought, is he going to turn into like a puppet or something, or like a bat on a string, or like a CGI bat? I was just thinking about it so much in my head, and I was like, what is it going to be? What are the options? Is it going to be cringe or whatever? No, instead he just pops up from behind a couch and starts like pretending to flap around. He didn't turn into anything, and it was so stupid, but I laughed at it anyway. I know I'm like kind of laughing throughout this entire review. It's just that's the thing. I don't know if I could recommend this movie. I'm a fucking mess over this movie. I don't know if I could recommend this movie because it's bad and it's really dumb. But I enjoyed it, but I don't know if everyone else would. So it's a maybe. If you want like a dumb, campy vampire rom-com that's very 80s, this is for you, I guess. But anyway, let me continue. I will give this movie credit. I do like the whole concept of a vampire spending a year trying to become human is the main plot over the romance or anything else, where he eventually gets to go in the sun and he's eating things. I haven't really seen a lot of vampire stuff that's like that. I'd be more interested in that concept. If anything, this movie, and especially like Zachary as a character being like this huge dork or whatever, kind of reminded me of What We Do in the Shadows, not the TV show, which I have watched, but the movie that the TV show is based on. I don't remember what the name of the main character in that one was, but he kind of reminds me a bit of Zachary, where they're both kind of like they're vampires, but they're also friendly dorks, if that makes sense. But I feel like the movie becomes less fun when Zachary becomes more of a normal person and becomes an insurance salesman. Like, yeah, he becomes more human in a sense, but boring. And by human, I don't mean like personality-wise or anything. I mean like he's physically becoming more human, which his appearance does not change because he already looks human anyway. As he's becoming more physically human, which just means being able to do less vampire stuff, so he can like eat food and whatever, and he has a job and stuff. He kind of loses more of his personality. And it's kind of weird where it's like he's not like he's some kind of eccentric weirdo when he's a vampire at the beginning anyway. He just is more of kind of like a fish out of water, but like a little more dorky about things, but probably because he's very fish out of water. And then once he gets adjusted to more of the human world, I mean, he still has the same personality. He's still a goober. It's just like a bit toned down. I feel like that makes sense, if anything. But then it also means he doesn't feel as special because he's not a vampire. He's just kind of some guy, but he was always some guy. It's kind of weird to explain. There's kind of more to that. I like the end of the movie, honestly. Anyway, I already kind of... Oh yeah, something that's weird too. Or maybe, I don't know, like Adam Ant, I mentioned I only really know about him from this movie and the Live Aid concert, but I mean, the concert he's singing, he doesn't really, I don't remember him really talking. I don't remember what his voice sounds like, though. You know how people, when they sing and when they talk, they can sound kind of different? He has this, like, kind of posh sounding accent and playing this vampire character, but then it kind of goes away and sounding more just kind of normal, I guess, which I'm assuming is how his actual voice sounds. Again, I need to listen to more of his music so I can figure this out, but also I'm just kind of curious about more of his music. But it was interesting. I noticed the kind of more like, I guess I'll call it the fake posh accent. I mean, I don't know if that's what his voice actually sounds like. I'm assuming not. It sounded like he was kind of putting on a voice. The more physically human Zachary becomes, the more I'm assuming he just starts talking in like Adam Ant's actual voice. I find that kind of interesting, but it does kind of keep switching around throughout the whole movie anyway, but I was just kind of noticing it more. Oh, okay, I even wrote it in my notes. It's interesting of like Zachary is still a bit of a goober, once almost human, but not as fun as the star of the movie. And then you find out that he might have gotten Kendall pregnant. There's like two crazy things with the ending. The first is that he got Kendall pregnant and he's like, yippee, we're gonna have a baby, and Kendall is just like, nope, I'm keeping this baby, but I want you out of my life. And I was like, what the heck? But and this is like before he 100% turns all of this stuff. Like, he finds out Kendall's pregnant, and the end of the movie happens literally the night of that he's going to turn like human permanently. So it's been a year. He's been working at this for so long. So just keep that in mind when I'm talking about the ending. It just makes everything feel so much worse. But yeah, he's really excited to have a baby with Kendall, not just because he loves her, but it turns out, like I said, even when he was originally with Nerissa and stuff, this dude just really wants to be a dad, and he's so excited to be human, and Kendall's just like, nope, I want you out of here, and he's confused about it. And it feels like it kind of just comes out of nowhere too, because him and Kendall never really get into fights or anything. There's no drama or whatever. They're kind of just roommates and living their lives, and then suddenly she's like seems really upset out of nowhere and wants him gone, and it's like, okay, what's with this shift? It turns out, and the other characters like Dwight and Nerissa are also here during this scene. Kendall is actually upset of Zachary becoming human because she thinks he's basically more boring as a human, and the other two characters also want him to turn into a vampire again. I mean, it is that his personality did change a bit, becoming more human, but it's not like an insane dramatic shift, which is why I'm like, why are the characters so freaked out? It's like I was saying, he's like, it's like a toned down version of his original vampire self, but it's because like he's having his own life now. He's like has a job, he's dating Kendall, and they're sharing this house and stuff. He's just becoming, you know, like everybody else. But it's also like, it's not like he was going to keep those fish out of water things for traits forever, because, you know, he's getting used to the world and stuff. I feel like this would be the reality if like I feel like this would be kind of the reality of like any sort of like fish out of water sort of story or something, of like a non-human character having adjusted to the world. Eventually they would, I'm assuming they would adjust, maybe, and I'm not saying this happens for every one of these stories. Sometimes they do just go back to where they're from or whatever, or stay as like a magical person or something. But I'd imagine for some of them it would be like eventually they probably would get used to the world they're living in now, and that's that, basically, whether they're like human or not. And the thing with Zachary becoming human is like he's basically like a human person in the beginning anyway. I mean, yeah, he's a vampire like physically, where he's like physically cold and he's dead and he can't go into the sun, but like personality wise he was already like very sort of human in a sense to begin with. So it's not like he's changing a ton or anything. It's just kind of weird to me that all the characters kind of, or it's specifically Kendall actually, that kind of freaks out at the end of like, I don't want you to be a human, you're lame, I want you to go back to being a vampire. It's not even of him being a vampire of like, whoa, he's like dead and doesn't age or whatever. It's not any of that. It's just she wants him to go back to his original personality, basically, of like how he was when he first met her, which is kind of weird. The reason the other characters want him to go back to being a vampire is, I think it's just that Nerissa's kind of weirded out by Zachary wanting to be a vampire in the first place. Zachary at this point is so good at being an insurance salesman that I think he's basically taken Dwight's job, and Dwight's upset about that or whatever. I don't really know. But yeah, all three of them want Zachary to go back to being a vampire, and Zachary reluctantly agrees, and Kendall's happy about this, and they're gonna raise this baby together and stuff. But yeah, I feel really, I'll get more into that in a second, but I feel really bad for Zachary, where he's, you know, he's wanted to be a dad forever and stuff. He didn't want to ever be a vampire. He only agreed to it because he loved Nerissa, and then she ends up ghosting him. So he's just stuck as a vampire anyway. Like, he's actually lucky there's the whole, like, you can turn into a human if you do this, or otherwise it's like, man, dude would have just ended up immortal forever for somebody that doesn't care about him. So he wants to be human more than anything else in the world. He spent an entire year, like, readjusting his body to being human, basically, and going through this whole physical transformation, which I'm assuming is a lot of work and everything, probably a bit painful. And then literally the night before it's permanent, everyone's like, no, go back to being a vampire, you suck now, and whatever. And he's kind of a bit like peer pressured into it, basically. And it's just like, poor guy, honestly. Like, he wanted to be human so bad, and everyone's just like, no. And then it gets reverted. Well, not immediately. It's gonna like take some time, but they basically agree, or like Nerissa's gonna turn him back into a vampire. It like takes a couple days or whatever. I mean, that way he ends up getting to stay with Kendall. But the fact that she's like, oh, I'm going to have you leave unless you turn back into a vampire, even though you desperately don't want to be a vampire, is so messed up to me, honestly. If it was me as Zachary in that situation, I'd be like, you're not worth it, I'll leave you then. But, you know, he loves her, and they're gonna have a baby. He wants to be a dad, so yeah. And then it ends up sort of being the happy ending from there, I guess, where all the characters are suddenly excited about this baby, where Nerissa wants to be the baby's godmother and is like, yeah, I'm gonna spoil your baby, but only if it's a girl or whatever. I'm gonna be your baby's vampire godmother that's gonna spoil her or whatever. And Dwight's also just kind of there. Kendall never seems like mad at Dwight for anything or whatever, and I guess Dwight accepts that they're not a thing anymore, and Dwight's kind of just there. He doesn't really need to be there. I don't know. So I guess Nerissa's just everyone's friend now, and Dwight's gonna try to hire her for his company or something. It's kind of a weird ending where everyone just sort of gets along by the end. But then it ends up being this thing where Kendall she wants Zachary to be a vampire again. He agrees. They're going to raise their baby. And Kendall's talking and being like, yeah, you're going to take care of the baby during nighttime or whatever. I'm going to be able to sleep. And then once the baby's old enough to understand, you're going to turn me into a vampire. And Zachary's just like, wait, what? No, you don't want this. And Kendall sounds more excited about being a vampire than Zachary, where it's like, yeah, we're going to be lovers forever, whatever. And I'm just thinking, like, dude, what about your baby? Because you're deciding to do this once your baby's old enough to understand, maybe like an adult or whatever. Like, it isn't made, I know I'm thinking too hard about this 90s movie, I don't care. It isn't made clear really if the baby is going to be born as a human or a vampire or something. I assumed the baby was going to be born human, probably, because Zachary was already turning into a human in the first place, or probably would end up more human than vampire at that point. But assuming the baby is human, and then the baby's gonna have a vampire dad, cool, and the mom eventually wants to become a vampire and stuff, so that your parents, they don't ever plan on saying, like, are we gonna make the baby a vampire? I mean, since they said the baby's going to be old enough to understand, I assume that means the kid's going to be human in age, which is good, because I feel like every vampire story I've watched where it's like specifically like a child or something that ends up as a vampire ends up being just really, sounds really bad, of like you're stuck in a child's body but you have an adult mind and you can't age properly or anything. That sounds awful. So I'm glad that their baby's going to be human or something. But imagine if they didn't make the baby a vampire, like when the kid eventually is an adult or something, make the adult a vampire too or whatever. Can you kind of imagine that, of like, you're an adult and you're a human and you're living your life and aging and whatever, but then your parents they don't age and they're gonna outlive you and they can't go into the sun or anything. I'd imagine having a vampire dad or whatever would probably be kind of weird too, of like, you just have a parent that can never like go outside with you or anything unless it's nighttime and stuff. I feel like having it where it's like one of the parents or both the parents are a vampire and the kid is human is probably gonna be kind of weird. Like, I'm glad the kid gets to age normally and I'm assuming being a human, but I feel like this brings up so many complicated things. The character's treated as no big deal, but I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I feel like this is gonna make so many problems with this family. And then the ending's weird too, where Kendall's like super hyped to be a vampire and eventually become immortal and whatever, and her and Zachary start kissing, and then it just like it like freeze frames or whatever, and it just cuts to the credits. It's like very abrupt. But yeah, that's pretty much all my notes in this movie. It's really dumb. I feel like the concept of it, and there were parts I enjoyed, of like the concept of a vampire going through this sort of journey to become human, but not in like a spiritual journey or a quest or whatever. It's just, he's just living life and sort of becoming human on the way, basically. And the parts where he is experiencing like human life and whatever, I think is fun. And then once he becomes an insurance salesman, see, that's the funny thing. I forgot to read that with my notes. Like, Kendall's saying, like, oh, you're becoming human. You're boring now. Go back. I want the old you. Go back to being a vampire. But the thing is, like, since he was already kind of personality human-wise to begin with and stuff, even at the beginning, like, when he's sort of becoming a human already, like he's starting to eat pizza and stuff, and him and Kendall are hanging out, he's not boring at that point. I specifically noticed it's only once Zachary gets a job and he gets further enough into the company where he's becoming more and more in charge of stuff that his personality sort of shifts a little bit. Because by the end, it's like he's suddenly talking to Kendall about, like, yeah, we're gonna buy another house. I want to just leave all this vampire stuff behind and leave behind this house and whatever and all these memories, and I'm doing really well in the company and basically just like a normal human at that point, where Kendall's just kind of weirded out by him. But yeah, it's not even him becoming human, it's just once he ends up getting the job and getting further enough into it that he has the shift that Kendall doesn't like. So I was thinking, like, why don't, instead of taking away his one dream of becoming human, I mean his other dream is becoming a dad, he's gonna have that no matter what, but his dream of becoming a human, which he was really enjoying, of being able to go in the sun and eat pizza, because it's not like he was born a vampire, he used to be human and he enjoyed that or whatever, I'm assuming. Why don't they just have him quit his job? And because they have him quit his job at the end of the movie anyway. Dwight takes the job away from him or convinces Zachary to like stop working there or something. And that's that, you know. And then he goes back to being a vampire and stuff. But I feel like if they only took the job away and let him become human, he'd go back to his previous personality. It was having a job that messed him up in the first place. And then he'd still be able to live like a normal life rather than just like you have to be a vampire to get your old personality. No, that's bullshit. Sorry, this at the ending of this movie just really bothers me, of that they probably could have solved it easier, but the fact that he was literally like a couple hours away of having his dream and then they took it away from him just pisses me off. But yeah, it's a dorky vampire movie. If you're listening to this and know that it's kind of dumb but a little funny and are curious about it, I'd say watch it. I'm gonna leave that up to you. I don't know if I can give a proper recommendation to this movie. I loved it because, I don't know, Adam Ant playing a dorky cute vampire was fun, honestly, but it's also such a dumb campy movie that it ends up being fun. I've heard he's in other movies. There was another one of his that I was gonna watch. I think it was called like Spell Casting or something. Actually, I saw it's gonna get taken off of Prime probably by tomorrow. I've heard it's not good. I've actually heard that a lot of the movies Adam Ant is in aren't good apparently, but that just makes me more curious because like this one was good. Actually, I did see the trailer for Spell Casting. It looked really 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 dumb and kind of bad, but like worse than this one. I wanted to see more movies with this guy. I'm curious. It's just really funny because like, I mean, okay, I don't really know much about his musical career or his music and stuff, but just based on the Live Aid concert before and just like the vibe of watching him like perform with that, I thought like the concept of him playing a vampire could have been really cool, but they make him kind of boring in a way. I think it's fashion wise, honestly. I feel like as like the playing the vampire and stuff, he could have, besides just the cloak, I feel like he could have had a cooler outfit. I feel like there could have just been more. I don't really know what more, but I feel like this could have been cooler somehow, while still being like a silly vampire romantic comedy and stuff. I almost want to say I'd watched more movies like this, but I don't know. I don't know what to classify this movie as, other than that I liked it. I feel more confused but happy, if anything. Yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Sorry this felt like I was kind of just talking around in circles. I like this movie, but I also don't really know what else to say about it. I want more things like this where it was like it's like a fine line for me where it was bad, but there was like just enough that I liked it, that I was like genuinely interested once I got kind of past the beginning. You know what? Yeah, I'd say watch it. Fine. I'm curious what other people's opinions are on this. Yeah. All right. Bye-bye.